Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars through the large window in front of him. The year was 2157, and humanity had just learned how to travel faster than light. This was only the third mission beyond Earth's solar system, and Jake felt both excited and nervous. "Captain, we're getting close to the Kepler 442 system," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from his seat at the control panel. Ben was young, maybe 25, with brown hair and a smile that never seemed to go away. He had joined the space program right after college. "Good work, Ben. Take us out of light speed when we reach the edge of the system," Jake replied. He was 42 years old and had been flying ships for almost 20 years. This was his first time commanding an exploration mission to find new worlds. Dr. Lisa Hamilton looked up from her computer screen. She was the ship's scientist, specializing in studying alien life forms. Nobody had ever found aliens before, but Lisa was hopeful. She had short red hair and green eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something interesting. "Captain, the sensors are picking up something unusual," she said. "There are metal objects near the third planet." "They're too regular to be natural." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Are you saying we found aliens?" "Maybe the objects look like they could be ships." Jake looked at his crew. There were 12 people on the Terra Nova, all volunteers who wanted to explore space. They had trained for years for this moment, but now that it was happening, everything felt different. "Send a message," Jake ordered. "Use the standard first contact protocol," Ben typed on his keyboard. "Message sent, Captain. We're broadcasting on all frequencies." "The message says we come in peace and want to talk." They waited. Minutes passed. Slowly, Jake walked around the bridge, checking different screens and trying to stay calm. This could be the most important moment in human history. "Captain," Ben said suddenly, "we're getting a response." "Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared made everyone on the bridge stop talking. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its head was shaped like a triangle, and its eyes were completely black. When it spoke, the words came out in a language nobody understood, but the computer translated them. "Unknown species, you have entered Zephyrion. Space without permission, state your purpose or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship Terra Nova. We come in peace. We want to learn about your people and share knowledge." The alien's expression did not change. "I am War Commander Vextala of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species is unknown to us. You will surrender your ship and submit to questioning." "We cannot do that," Jake said calmly. "We are explorers, not soldiers. We offer friendship between our peoples." "Friendship is weakness. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. You will surrender or be destroyed." Jake looked at his crew. They all seemed scared, but ready to follow his orders. "We will not surrender, but we do not want to fight. Please reconsider." War Commander Vextala made a gesture with one of his 4 arms. "You have chosen destruction. Attack Formation 7. The screen went black. Immediately, alarms started ringing throughout the ship. "Captain, 3 alien ships are approaching fast," Ben reported. "They're much bigger than us. Shields up. Prepare for battle," Jake ordered. The first alien ship fired a beam of bright blue light. The Terra Nova shook violently and several crew members fell down. The lights flickered. "Shields down to 60%, called out engineer Amy Watson from the back of the bridge. She was a tall woman with black hair who had designed many of the ship's systems. "Return fire," Jake commanded. The Terra Nova's weapons hit the alien ship, but they barely seemed to damage it. The aliens fired again, and this time the ship shook even more violently. "Captain, we can't win this fight," Ben said. "Their weapons are too strong." Jake knew Ben was right. The alien ships were more advanced than anything humans had built, but he also knew they couldn't just give up. "Send a message to the other human ships in the area. Tell them to stay away from this system." "Already done, Captain." The second alien ship fired, and the Terra Nova's engines stopped working. They were floating in space, unable to move. "Shields down to 20%. Amy reported. Jake made a decision. Prepare to abandon ship. Get everyone to the escape pods. But before they could move, the alien ship stopped firing. A new voice came through the communication system. Human ship, you are defeated. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate death. Jake gathered his crew around him. Listen carefully. We're about to be captured by aliens who seem to think we're inferior. But we're humans, and that means we don't give up easily. Stay alert, help each other, and remember that we represent all of humanity. Dr. Hamilton stepped forward. Captain, what if we try to learn about them? Maybe understanding their culture could help us. Good idea, Lisa. Everyone, observe everything you can. How they act, how they think, what they value. This information might be important later. The alien boarding party arrived in small ships that attached to the Terra Nova like metal insects. The doors opened with a hissing sound, and 6 Zephyrian soldiers entered the bridge. They were all tall and thin like War Commander Vextala, but they wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. The lead soldier spoke in the same translated voice they had heard before. You are now prisoners of the Zephyrian Empire. You will be taken for questioning. Jake stepped forward. I am the captain of this ship. My crew was following my orders. If you want to punish someone, punish me. The soldier tilted his triangular head. Interesting. You claim responsibility for your subordinates' actions. This is unusual behavior. It's called leadership, Jake replied. Leadership is a concept we do not understand. In the Zephyrian Empire, all actions are predetermined by the High Command. Individual choice leads to chaos. Dr. Hamilton couldn't help herself. That's fascinating. How do you handle unexpected situations? The soldier looked at her. Unexpected situations do not occur when proper protocols are followed. Ben laughed, which surprised everyone, including the aliens. You've never met humans before, have you? Explain your meaning. Humans are really good at unexpected situations. We kind of specialize in them. The soldier made a gesture that might have been confusion. You find humor in your defeat? Not really, Ben said, still smiling, but I find it interesting that you think this is over. The soldiers looked at each other. Something in their body language suggested they were communicating, but the humans couldn't understand how. You will be transported to the interrogation facility, the lead soldier announced. Resistance will be punished. As the human crew was led away from their ship, Jake noticed something important. The aliens moved in perfect formation, never breaking ranks or acting individually. They followed exact procedures for everything, from how they walked to how they held their weapons. Dr. Hamilton whispered to him as they walked. Did you see that? They're not just organized, they're completely rigid. It's like they can't think outside their training. And that might be useful information, Jake whispered back. The alien transport ship was unlike anything humans had built. Everything was perfectly symmetrical and organized. There were no decorations, no personal touches, nothing that suggested individual personality. As they were placed in holding cells, Jake looked at his crew. They were scared but not broken. Ben was still making quiet jokes. Amy was studying the cell's technology. Dr. Hamilton was watching their captors with scientific curiosity. War Commander Vextala appeared outside their cells. You will be questioned about your species' capabilities and intentions. Those who cooperate will be treated well. Those who resist will suffer. What do you want to know? Jake asked. Everything. Your technology, your military strength, your weaknesses. The High Command believes your species possesses a dangerous weapon that makes you unpredictable. Jake and his crew looked at each other in confusion. What weapon? That is what we intend to discover, the War Commander replied. Your behavior during capture was unlike any species we have encountered. You showed neither proper submission nor logical resistance. This suggests a psychological weapon of unknown type. As the alien commander left, Jake realized something that would change everything. The aliens didn't understand human behavior because they had never encountered a species that could think creatively, adapt quickly, and maintain hope in impossible situations. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or military might. It was simply being human. 3 weeks after the Terra Nova was captured, the Zephyrian Empire launched a massive invasion fleet toward Earth. War Commander Vextella had sent his report to the High Command, warning them about the strange psychological weapon that humans seemed to possess. The High Command decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to develop this weapon further. Admiral Karen Phillips stood in the command center of the space station Liberty, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. She was 55 years old and had been in the military for 30 years. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes showed no fear, even though she knew the odds were terrible. "How many ships are we looking at?" she asked her tactical officer. "Over 200, Admiral." "They're bigger than anything we've ever seen." "Our entire defense fleet has only 23 ships," Karen nodded. She had expected this. The message from Captain Morrison before he was captured had warned them that the aliens were technologically superior. But humans had faced impossible odds before and found ways to win. "Send a message to all fleet commanders. We're not going to win this. Fight with firepower alone. We need to be creative." The first battle happened near Mars. The human cruiser Defiant, commanded by Commander Ryan Brooks, was badly damaged by enemy fire. Ryan was a tall man with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He had served on many ships before getting his own command. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, reported his engineer. "We're losing power to the main weapons." "Sir, enemy boarding parties are approaching," said Lieutenant Kelly Davis from the communications station. She was young and nervous, but she had trained well. Ryan looked around his bridge. His crew was scared but ready to follow orders. "Listen up, everyone. We're about to have company. Remember what we learned in the briefings. These aliens don't understand human psychology. Let's use that." The Zephyrian soldiers cut through the Defiant's hull with tools that melted metal like ice. They entered the ship in perfect formation, expecting either surrender or desperate fighting. Instead, they found Commander Brooks standing calmly in the corridor, holding a cup of coffee. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," Ryan said pleasantly. "Would you like some coffee?" "It's freshly made." The lead Zephyrian soldier stopped. This was not the behavior they expected from a defeated enemy. "You are ordered to surrender your ship immediately." Of course. "But first, let me tell you about my hometown. It's called Denver, and it's in the mountains. Beautiful place, especially in winter when the snow covers everything." Ryan kept talking while walking slowly toward the ship's engine room. The aliens followed him, confused by his casual manner. They had conquered 47 different species, and none of them had ever offered refreshments to their captors. "Sir," one of the soldiers said to their leader, "the humans' behavior is not following expected patterns." "Continue monitoring," the leader replied. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Amy Watson was crawling through the ship's maintenance tunnels. She had been on the Terra Nova when it was captured, but she had been transferred to the Defiant just before the invasion started. Amy knew exactly what she needed to do. "Amy to Commander Brooks," she whispered into her communication device. "Go ahead, Amy. I'm in position. Keep them distracted for 2 more minutes." Ryan continued his cheerful conversation with the aliens. "You know, when I was a kid, I used to build model spaceships. Never thought I'd actually be commanding a real one. Life is funny that way." The Zephyrian soldiers looked at each other. Their leader was becoming increasingly frustrated. "Human, you will cease this irrelevant communication and surrender your ship's control codes." "Oh, absolutely. I'm just nervous, you know. When I get nervous, I talk a lot." "It's a human thing. Do your people get nervous?" "Nervousness is an inefficient emotional response. The Zephyrian Empire has evolved beyond such weaknesses." "That's too bad." "Nervousness keeps us alert. It helps us notice things." Amy's voice came through Ryan's earpiece. "It's done. Get ready. Notice what things?" the alien leader asked. Ryan smiled. "Like the fact that my engineer has been uploading a virus to your equipment while we've been talking." The aliens' weapons and communication devices started sparking and shutting down. In the confusion, Ryan pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The ship's self-destruct sequence began. "You have 10 minutes to get off my ship," Ryan said calmly. "The lifeboats are that way." The aliens ran toward their boarding craft. But several of their soldiers were trapped when the virus shut down their cutting tools. Ryan and his crew escaped in the emergency pods, but the Defiant exploded, taking 12 Zephyrian soldiers with it. On Earth, Dr. Peter Grant was working with Colonel Nina Roberts to study the reports from the first battles. Peter was a psychologist who specialized in understanding how different minds worked. Nina was a military strategist who had studied every human war in history. "The aliens are completely predictable," Peter told Nina as they sat in a small office deep underground. "They follow the same patterns every time. Formation attacks, standard boarding procedures, expected interrogation methods." "What does that tell us?" Nina asked. "It tells us they've never faced an enemy that could think outside their playbook. Look at this report from Commander Brooks. He defeated a superior force by doing something they never expected, being friendly." Nina looked at the combat footage on her computer screen. "He wasn't really being friendly. He was buying time and gathering information." "Exactly. But the aliens couldn't tell the difference. They took his words at face value because they don't understand deception. So their weakness is that they're too honest? It's more than that. They seem to have eliminated individual creativity from their society. They probably think it's inefficient. But creativity is what makes humans adaptable." Nina leaned back in her chair. "We need to spread this information to all our commanders. If the aliens can't handle unpredictable behavior, let's give them more than they can process." The next major battle took place near Jupiter. Captain Troy Miller commanded the destroyer Fierce Wind, a small ship with a crew of only 30 people. Troy was young for a captain, just 32, but he had graduated first in his class from the military academy. "Captain, we're outnumbered 5-1, his tactical officer reported. "Perfect," Troy replied. "That means they'll expect us to run away or fight defensively." Instead, Troy ordered his ship to charge directly at the enemy fleet. The Zephyrians were confused by this apparent suicide attack. Their formations were designed to surround fleeing enemies, not to handle a frontal assault. "Sir, the human ship is not following logical tactical patterns," reported a Zephyrian ship commander. "All vessels maintain formation and prepare for standard engagement," came the reply from the fleet commander, but Troy wasn't planning a standard engagement. As the Fierce Wind approached the enemy fleet, he suddenly changed course and flew through the middle of their formation. The Zephyrian ships couldn't fire without hitting each other. "Now," Troy ordered. The Fierce Wind released all its missiles at once, not at the enemy ships, but at the empty space around them. The missiles exploded in a pattern that created a cloud of metal fragments and electromagnetic interference. The Zephyrian fleet was suddenly flying blind. Their sensors couldn't penetrate the interference, and their communication systems were jammed. Ships started colliding with each other as they tried to maintain their rigid formations. "All human ships attack now," Troy broadcast on a frequency. The aliens couldn't jam. The rest of the human fleet had been hiding behind Jupiter's moons. They attacked the confused Zephyrians from all directions, using tactics that changed every few minutes. Some ships pretended to be damaged and then attacked when the aliens approached. Others broadcast false surrender messages and then launched missiles. The Zephyrians lost 12 ships in the battle. The humans lost 3. But they had proven something important. Creativity could overcome superior technology. Back on the captured research station where the Terra Nova crew was being held, Dr. Lisa Hamilton was having long conversations with her guards. She had discovered something interesting about Zephyrian psychology. "You mentioned that your people evolved from hive mind organisms," she said to one of the guards during her daily exercise period. "Correct. Individual thought was eliminated 50,000 years ago. It caused chaos and inefficiency. But doesn't that make you vulnerable to species that still think individually?" The guard paused. "Explain." "Well, you can predict what a group will do because groups follow patterns. But individuals are unpredictable. They make decisions based on emotions, personal experience, and creativity. Individual decision-making is a weakness. It leads to mistakes and conflict. Lisa smiled. Sometimes. But it also leads to innovation and adaptation. Your species is very efficient, but efficiency isn't the same as effectiveness. The guard reported this conversation to his superiors, but they dismissed it as human propaganda. They couldn't understand that Lisa was actually studying them, learning their weaknesses by making them explain their own psychology. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was planning something that would change the course of the war. He had been observing the aliens for weeks, and he had noticed something important about their command structure. "Ben," he whispered to Lieutenant Carter during their mealtime. Captain Jake Morrison had been a prisoner for 2 months, but he had not been wasting his time. Every day he watched the aliens and learned how they thought. Every conversation with his guards taught him something new about their weaknesses. Now he was ready to put his plan into action. The Zephyrian prison facility was built like everything else in their society, perfectly organized and predictable. Guards followed the same routes every day. Meals were delivered at exact times. Even the prisoners' exercise periods were scheduled down to the minute. "Lisa, are you sure about this?" Jake whispered to Dr. Hamilton during their morning exercise. Time. They were walking in a circle around the exercise area, just like they did every day. "Absolutely," Lisa replied quietly. "I've been studying their language patterns for weeks." "They never lie, Jake. They literally cannot understand the concept of saying something that isn't true." Lieutenant Ben Carter jogged up beside them. "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. How can an entire species not understand lying?" "Think about it," Lisa explained. "They evolved from hive mind organisms. In a hive mind, there's no point in lying because everyone shares the same thoughts. They've been like this for 50,000 years. Amy Watson, who had been captured after the Defiant was destroyed, joined their conversation. "So when we tell them something false, they just believe it?" "Not exactly," Lisa said. "They can recognize when information doesn't match their data, but they can't understand deliberate deception. They think we're just confused or mistaken," Jake nodded. "That's why my plan will work. We're going to tell them the truth, but not the whole truth." That afternoon, Jake asked to speak with War Commander Vextela. The alien leader came to the detention area, surrounded by his usual guards. "You requested communication, human." "State." "Your purpose." "I want to make a deal," Jake said. "My crew and I have information about human military capabilities. We're willing to share it in exchange for better treatment." Vextela's triangular head tilted slightly. "You would betray your own species? We're not betraying anyone. We're just tired of being treated like animals. We want comfortable quarters, better food, and access to educational materials." The war commander considered this. In Zephyrian society, cooperation was always rewarded. "What information do you offer?" "I can tell you about our secret weapon, the one your people are so worried about." This got the aliens' attention immediately. "Explain." Jake took a deep breath. "It's called human intuition. We can make correct decisions without having all the information. We can sense things that aren't obvious." "How is this possible?" "Our brains evolved to recognize patterns quickly. We can see connections that others miss. It's why we seem unpredictable to you." Vextela made notes on a device he carried. "Continue." "The problem is that this ability only works when we're under stress. When we're comfortable and well-fed, we lose our intuitive powers. That's why human prisoners are dangerous. Stress makes us more capable, not less." The war commander's black eyes seemed to light up. "You are saying that poor treatment makes humans more formidable?" "Exactly. If you want to keep human prisoners under control, you need to make them comfortable. Good food, entertainment, social interaction, these things make us weak and compliant." Everything Jake had said was technically true. Humans did have intuitive abilities, and stress could enhance certain types of thinking. But he had left out the most important part. Humans were also incredibly good at using comfort and resources to plan escapes. Within a week, the human prisoners were moved to better quarters. They had access to the prison's computer systems for educational purposes. They were given tools and materials to keep them mentally stimulated. Most importantly, they were allowed to spend time together in groups. "Jake, you're a genius," Amy whispered as they sat in their new common area. "They're giving us everything we need to escape." "Not just escape," Jake replied. "We're going to do something much more important." While the prisoners were planning, the war in Earth's solar system was intensifying. Captain Troy Miller had been promoted to admiral after his victory near Jupiter. Now he commanded a fleet of 30 ships, facing a Zephyrian force of over 100 vessels. "Admiral, we're receiving strange communications from the enemy fleet," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Danny Lee. Danny was a young man with excellent hearing and a talent for understanding foreign languages. "What kind of communications?" "They're giving contradictory orders to their own ships. Some are being told to attack, others to retreat. It's like their command structure is breaking down." Troy smiled. "That's not a breakdown. That's sabotage. Someone is feeding them false information." What Troy didn't know was that Captain Morrison had gained access to the Zephyrian communication network. Using the prison's computer systems, Jake had been sending fake orders to military units across the galaxy. The aliens' rigid command structure made them vulnerable to this kind of attack because they never questioned orders from higher authority. "Squadron 7, this is High Command," Jake transmitted using stolen communication codes. "You are ordered to relocate to Sector 12 for urgent repairs." "Confirmed, High Command. Squadron 7 departing." Jake looked at his crew. They were all huddled around the computer terminal in their common area. "That's the third squadron we've redirected away from Earth. How many more can we confuse before they figure out what's happening?" "The beautiful thing is that they might never figure it out," Lisa said. "Each squadron thinks they're following legitimate orders. They won't compare notes because that would be questioning authority." Meanwhile, on Earth, the resistance movement was growing stronger. Martha King had been a high school teacher before the invasion, but now she was leading a group of civilians who were fighting back against the occupying forces. "Remember, we're not trying to kill them," Martha told her team as they prepared for another mission. "We're trying to confuse them." The resistance had learned that the aliens couldn't handle chaos. They operated on strict schedules and procedures. When humans disrupted these patterns, the aliens became paralyzed with indecision. Martha's team would do things like rearrange street signs, change the numbers on buildings, and move traffic signals. To humans, these were minor inconveniences. To the aliens, they were major system failures that required lengthy meetings and new protocols. "Mrs. King, the aliens are requesting another meeting about the street sign issue," reported Tom Wilson, a former city planner who had joined the resistance. "Good. Schedule it for the same time as their patrol inspection. Let them choose which protocol to follow." The aliens couldn't handle scheduling conflicts. They would spend hours trying to determine which obligation was more important. Instead of simply making a quick decision, Dr. Peter Grant and Colonel Nina Roberts were developing new tactics based on what they had learned about Zephyrian psychology. They had discovered that the aliens' greatest weakness was their inability to adapt to unexpected situations. "We need to create as much chaos as possible," Peter explained to a group of military commanders. "Not violent chaos, but psychological chaos. We need to make them face situations they've never encountered before." "How do we do that?" asked Commander Helen Clark, who had recently been rescued from a Zephyrian prison ship. "By being human," Nina replied. "By acting in ways that don't follow their logical patterns. By showing emotions they don't understand. By making decisions that seem irrational but actually serve our purposes." The key breakthrough came when they realized that the aliens had never encountered a species that could lie effectively. The Zephyrians could detect obvious falsehoods, but they couldn't understand sophisticated deception. "We need to tell them things that are true but misleading," Peter explained. "Like telling them that humans fight harder when they're angry, so they should try to keep us calm. It's technically true, but it misses the point that angry humans are also more creative and determined. Back at the prison facility, Jake was preparing for the most important part of his plan. He had been feeding false information to the Zephyrian fleet for weeks, but now he was ready for something bigger. "I need to speak with the highest-ranking officer available," Jake told his guard. "I have information about a human counterattack that could destroy the entire Zephyrian fleet." The guard immediately contacted his superiors. Within hours, Jake was brought before Fleet Commander Zekthal, the alien in charge of the entire invasion force. "Human, you claim to have knowledge of an attack on our fleet?" "Yes, sir. The human military is planning to use their ultimate weapon. They're going to deploy something called a chaos bomb that will make your ships turn against each other." Zekthal's eyes widened. "Explain this weapon." "It's a psychological device that makes people question their orders and think independently. For humans, it's just mildly disorienting. But for your people, it would be devastating." Jake was describing something that didn't exist, but he was basing it on real Zephyrian psychology. The aliens' greatest fear was exactly what he was describing, a breakdown of their rigid command structure. "How can this weapon be stopped?" "Your ships need to maintain complete communication silence. No orders, no reports, no coordination. Each ship must act independently until the threat passes." Zekthal immediately sent orders to the entire fleet to cease all. The defeat of the Zephyrian fleet near Earth sent shockwaves through their empire. For the first time in 1,000 years, the aliens had lost a major battle to what they considered an inferior species. War Commander Vextella found himself summoned before the Zephyrian High Command to explain how this had happened. The High Command met in a massive chamber on their homeworld of Zeph Prime. 12 Supreme Commanders sat in perfect formation around a circular table. Each one was identical in appearance, thinking, and purpose. They had eliminated individual personality from their leadership centuries ago. "War Commander Vextella," spoke Supreme Commander 1. "Your report indicates that humans possess a psychological weapon of unknown nature. Explain how 23 primitive ships defeated a fleet of 200 advanced vessels." Vextella stood at attention. "Supreme Commanders, the humans do not fight according to logical patterns. They change their tactics constantly, making them impossible to predict." "All species can be predicted," replied Supreme Commander 3. "You simply have not gathered sufficient data." "With respect, Supreme Commanders, I believe these humans are different. They seem to make decisions based on factors we do not understand." Supreme Commander 7 leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that humans are superior to Zephyrians?" "No, Supreme Commanders. I'm suggesting that they are dangerous in ways we have never encountered." The High Command deliberated for exactly 60 minutes, as was their custom. Then Supreme Commander 1 announced their decision. "The human threat will be eliminated through total warfare. All available fleets will converge on Earth. The planet will be destroyed, ending the threat permanently." But while the Zephyrians were planning their final attack, humans were preparing something even more ambitious. Captain Jake Morrison had been rescued during the recent victory, and he brought with him valuable intelligence about Zephyrian weaknesses. Admiral Troy Miller met with Jake in the command center of the space station Freedom. Troy had been promoted again after his latest victory and now commanded all human forces in the outer solar system. "Jake, what you've learned about their psychology could change everything," Troy said as they looked at star maps showing Zephyrian fleet movements. "It's more than psychology, Troy. They literally cannot understand individual creativity. They think it's a form of mental illness. How do we use that against them?" Jake pointed to the map. "They're sending everything they have at us. Every ship, every commander, all following the same basic plan. But what if we could make them think their own plan was wrong?" Commander Alex Turner joined the conversation. Alex was a specialist in what humans called psychological operations. He had studied every piece of information about Zephyrian thinking. "Patterns, we've been working on something," Alex said. "A way to turn their entire command structure against itself." Alex explained the plan. Using the communication codes that Jake had stolen, they would send false reports to different parts of the Zephyrian fleet. Each group would receive information suggesting that other groups had been compromised or were acting suspiciously. The beautiful part is that they'll do our work for us, Alex continued. Their security protocols require them to investigate any suspected problems. They'll spend so much time checking on each other that they won't be able to coordinate their attack. Dr. Patricia Stone had been studying the psychological profiles of captured Zephyrian commanders. Patricia was a specialist in understanding how different minds worked, and she had discovered something important. Their greatest fear isn't death or defeat, Patricia explained to the planning committee. It's chaos. They're terrified of situations they can't control or predict. So we give them chaos, said Colonel Nina Roberts. Controlled chaos that serves our purposes. The operation began 3 days before the Zephyrian fleet was scheduled to arrive at Earth. Communication Officer Danny Lee, who had become an expert at mimicking alien communication patterns, started sending carefully crafted messages. Attention Fleet Group 7, Danny transmitted using stolen command codes. Intelligence reports indicate possible infiltration by human agents. Implement Security Protocol 15 immediately. Security Protocol 15 required every ship to be searched completely and all crew members to be questioned. It was a process that took exactly 48 hours to complete. Fleet Group 12, this is High Command, came another message an hour later. Unusual energy signatures detected in your sector? Maintain full defensive posture until further notice. Within 6 hours, the massive Zephyrian fleet was scattered across the solar system, each group following different defensive procedures. None of them were communicating with the others because their security protocols forbade it. On the Zephyrian fortress world of Kethver, thousands of human prisoners were being held in facilities designed to break their will. But the aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had underestimated human determination and creativity. Dr. Helen Clark had been captured 3 months earlier when her research ship was attacked. Helen was a specialist in computer systems, and she had been secretly working on a plan to escape. But more importantly, she had been teaching other prisoners how to think like engineers. The guards change shifts every 6 hours, Helen whispered to her cellmate, communications specialist Carol Brown. But there's a 12-minute gap when the automated systems take over. 12 minutes isn't enough time to escape, Carol replied. It's enough time to reprogram their security system. Helen said with a smile. The escape plan was typically human complex, risky, and completely unexpected. Instead of trying to break out by force, the prisoners would convince the prison's computer system that they were authorized personnel. Helen had discovered that the Zephyrian computer systems were just as rigid as their society. They followed exact rules and never questioned orders from higher authority. If she could make the computer think she was a Zephyrian commander, she could walk out the front door. The hard part isn't fooling the computer, Helen explained to a group of prisoners. The hard part is acting like Zephyrians. We need to move in formation, speak in their formal language patterns, and never show individual personality. It was the ultimate test of human acting ability, pretending to be aliens who had no individual creativity. For humans who expressed personality in everything they did, it was like trying not to breathe. The escape happened during the night shift when fewer guards were on duty. Helen and 49 other prisoners put on stolen Zephyrian uniforms and walked through the prison corridors in perfect formation. Prisoner transfer group reporting for duty, Helen announced to the main gate guards, speaking in the flat, emotionless tone that Zephyrians used. Transfer orders. Asked the guard. Helen handed over forged documents that she had created using the prison's own computer system. High Command requires these humans for advanced interrogation at Facility 7. The guards checked their computers and found the fake orders that Helen had planted. Everything appeared to be legitimate. The prisoners were loaded onto a transport ship and flown away from the fortress world, but instead of escaping to human space, Helen directed the ship toward the Zephyrian homeworld. She had a plan that was so audacious that only humans could have conceived it. We're going to surrender, she told the confused prisoners. What? Asked Carol. We just escaped. Why would we surrender? Because we're not going to surrender as escaped prisoners. We're going to surrender as Zephyrian officers who have discovered that the human psychological weapon is real and dangerous. Helen's plan was to infiltrate the Zephyrian High Command itself. Using their knowledge of alien psychology, the humans would convince the leadership that they needed to change their tactics completely. Meanwhile, the final battle for Earth was beginning in a way that nobody expected. The scattered Zephyrian fleet groups, unable to communicate with each other due to their own security protocols, started arriving at Earth at different times and with different objectives. Admiral Troy Miller watched from the command center as the first enemy group appeared near Mars. They're not coordinating their approach. Each group is following a different strategy. That's impossible, said his tactical officer. The Zephyrians always coordinate everything. Not anymore, Troy replied. Jake's plan is working. They're so busy following security procedures that they can't work together. The battle that followed was unlike anything in military history. Instead of facing one massive coordinated attack, the human fleet faced a series of smaller, confused engagements. Each Zephyrian group attacked alone, unable to call for support or coordinate with other units. Captain Ryan Brooks, who had been promoted after his heroic actions on the Defiant, commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. This is like fighting 12 different enemies instead of one big one, he reported. They're actually making it easier for us. The most crucial moment came when War Commander Vexthala's own command ship arrived at Earth. Cut off from communication with his fleet and operating under multiple conflicting security protocols, Vexthala found himself facing Admiral Troy Miller's flagship alone. This is Admiral Troy Miller of the Earth Defense Force, Troy broadcast on an open channel. War Commander Vexthala, I challenge you to single combat to decide the fate of both our species. It was a completely illogical proposal. The surrender of War Commander Vexthala marked the beginning of the end for the Zephyrian invasion, but the most important battle was yet to come. It would not be fought with weapons or ships, but with words and ideas in a meeting room on a neutral space station. Admiral Karen Phillips stood looking out the window of Station Horizon 1, watching as both human and Zephyrian ships approached. She had been chosen to lead the peace negotiations because of her reputation for fairness and her ability to understand alien psychology. At 62 years old, she had seen enough war to know that victory meant nothing if it didn't lead to lasting peace. Admiral, the Zephyrian delegation is requesting permission to board, reported Lieutenant Danny Lee, who had been promoted for his excellent work with alien communications. Grant permission. And Danny, make sure our security teams understand, no weapons, no threatening gestures. We want them to feel safe. War Commander Vexthala entered the meeting room accompanied by two Supreme commanders who had traveled from Zeph Prime. The aliens moved in their usual perfect formation, but Karen noticed something different about them. They seemed uncertain, almost nervous. War Commander, Karen said, standing to greet them. Thank you for coming. Please sit wherever you're comfortable. The simple offer to choose their own seats seemed to confuse the aliens. In Zephyrian society, seating arrangements were determined by rigid protocols. The concept of personal preference was foreign to them. We will sit according to standard diplomatic formation, Vexthala replied after a moment of hesitation. Of course, Karen said, hiding her smile. Even in defeat, they couldn't break their patterns. The negotiations began formally, with both sides stating their positions. The Zephyrians demanded human surrender and integration into their empire. The humans demanded the withdrawal of all alien forces and recognition of Earth's independence, but Captain Jake Morrison, who attended as an advisor, had a different plan. He knew that the real battle would be fought in the minds of the Supreme Commanders. War Commander, Jake said during a break in the formal talks, may I ask you a question about your people's history? You may ask. Your species evolved from hive mind organisms, correct? You eliminated individual thinking because it caused problems? Individual thinking leads to chaos and inefficiency. The collective mind is superior in all ways. Jake nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. We've studied your military tactics, and they're incredibly efficient. Every ship knows exactly what to do. Every soldier follows perfect procedures. Supreme. Commander 2 leaned forward. You acknowledge our superiority? Oh, absolutely. Your coordination is amazing. But I'm curious about something. What happens when your procedures encounter a situation they weren't designed for? The aliens looked at each other. It was a question they had been struggling with throughout the entire war. All situations can be addressed through proper protocols, Vexthela said. But his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, who had been studying alien psychology since her capture, joined the conversation. War Commander, during my time as your prisoner, I noticed something interesting. Your guards always ask their supervisors for instructions, even about simple decisions. Why is that? Individual decision-making is forbidden. All choices must be approved by higher authority. But what if the higher authority isn't available? What if communication is cut off? The Supreme Commander shifted uncomfortably. This was exactly what had happened during the final battle, when their security protocols had prevented coordination between fleet groups. Lisa continued gently. Your system works perfectly when everything goes according to plan. But humans specialize in situations where nothing goes according to plan. Admiral Phillips decided it was time to reveal humanity's true strategy. War Commander, Supreme Commanders, I want to show you something. Jake, would you demonstrate? Jake stood up and walked to the window. I'm going to ask my tactical officer a question, and I want you to observe his response. He activated his communicator. Lieutenant Carter, if you were commanding a ship and enemy forces appeared unexpectedly from 3 directions, what would you do? Ben Carter's voice came through clearly. Well, sir, I'd probably feint toward the weakest group to make them think. I was retreating, then circle around and hit their command ship from behind while they were regrouping. And if that didn't work, I'd try something else. Maybe ram them or pretend to surrender and then self-destruct or broadcast false surrender signals to confuse them. There are lots of options. Jake turned back to the aliens. Did you notice something? He came up with multiple solutions instantly, and he was willing to consider tactics that might seem illogical or risky. Your subordinate was making unauthorized decisions, Supreme Commander 1 observed. Exactly, Karen said. That's our secret weapon. Every human can think independently. Every human can adapt to new situations. Every human can be creative when necessary. The revelation hung in the air like a bomb. The Zephyrians had spent months searching for humanity's ultimate weapon, expecting to find some advanced technology or military strategy. Instead, they discovered that the weapon was simply human nature itself. War Commander Vexthela spoke slowly. You are saying that your entire species possesses individual consciousness? Every single one of us, Jake confirmed. We argue with each other, we disagree with our leaders, we make mistakes, and we learn from them. It's chaotic and inefficient, but it makes us adaptable. Supreme Commander 2 made a gesture that might have been distress. How do you maintain order? How do you coordinate large-scale operations? We don't, not the way you do, Admiral Phillips explained. We give our people general objectives and let them figure out how to achieve them. Sometimes they fail, but when they succeed, they often do it in ways we never expected. Dr. Patricia Stone, who had been observing the aliens throughout the negotiations, noticed something important. War Commander, you seem troubled by this information. Why? Because it means we have been fighting an enemy we do not understand. Our strategies assume that all intelligent species think like us. If humans think individually, then our entire approach to warfare is flawed. Not flawed, Karen said gently, just different. Your way works well for your people, our way works well for us. The breakthrough came when Supreme Commander 1 asked an unexpected question. If humans are naturally chaotic, how did you achieve space travel and advanced technology? Through cooperation, Jake explained. We may think individually, but we can work together when we choose to. The difference is that we choose to cooperate rather than being forced to. This is difficult to understand, admitted vexed HALA. Dr. Hamilton leaned forward. War Commander, may I tell you something that might help? During my time as your prisoner, I came to respect your people. Your dedication, your efficiency, your pursuit of perfection, these are admirable qualities. You do not view us as enemies? I view you as people who are different from us. That doesn't make you enemies unless we choose to be enemies. This concept seemed to shock the aliens even more than humanity's psychological weapons. The idea that former enemies could feel respect for each other was completely foreign to their thinking. Admiral Phillips saw her opportunity. War Commander, Supreme Commanders, I want to propose something unprecedented. Instead of one species conquering the other, what if we tried to learn from each other? Explain. Your people are masters of organization and efficiency. Our people are masters of adaptation and creativity. Imagine what we could accomplish together. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The aliens struggled to understand concepts like voluntary cooperation, individual choice, and mutual respect. But gradually, they began to see that humanity offered something their empire had never encountered: the possibility of growth through diversity. The final agreement was unlike any treaty in galactic history. Instead of surrender or conquest, it established humanity as an equal partner in the galactic community. The Zephyrian Empire would withdraw from human space, but both species would work together on research projects and cultural exchange programs. War Commander. Vex Dela signed the treaty with something that humans recognized as curiosity. I do not understand your species, he admitted to Admiral Phillips. But I'm beginning to believe that understanding is not required for cooperation. Sometimes the best partnerships are between people who think differently. Phillips replied. 5 years later, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Dr. Lisa Hamilton ran the Interspecies Psychology Institute on station. Unity, where humans and Zephyrians work together to understand different forms of consciousness. Captain Jake Morrison served as Earth's ambassador to the Zephyrian worlds, helping both species learn to communicate despite their fundamental differences. The war had ended not with victory or defeat, but with something more valuable: understanding. The Zephyrians learned that efficiency wasn't the only measure of success. Humans learned that chaos and creativity needed to be balanced with organization and planning. Ben Carter, now a captain himself, often told new recruits about the war. We didn't win because we were stronger or smarter, he would say. We won because we never stopped being human. We stayed curious, creative, and hopeful even when everything seemed impossible.